All right, everyone, we start off the day with very good news, and it's on the economy with regards to unemployment. It's fallen to 3.7%, so it's now at a 50-year low. So 1969 is the last time we had unemployment that low. Now, not to darken this otherwise happy, fluffy, sunlit cloud, but there is one thing we've got to mention, which is labor force participation. In all honesty, this is something Obama ignored it. Trump is largely ignoring it. It is improving, but it's still a problem, which is that labor force participation rates are still quite low. What's happened is that some people simply aren't, seeking jobs. However, there's a big however. Part of that has to do with the aging of the population. In a lot of parts of the country, you have, considerably higher numbers of people in retirement as a proportion of the population than in the past because the boomers are starting to get, up there. And so you've got that situation where, sometimes that happens. So that's part of it, but that's not the whole story. Some of it is people want to work, but they can't find it. Like, you've got a master's degree in chemistry and the only job around is McDonald's and you don't have the social network necessary to move. You're kind of screwed, at least for some time. For instance, at the height of the recession, I can remember that at Walmart there was a PhD working there. There was a dude who literally is like, yeah, I got a PhD, I've got published papers and everything. I'm sitting here working as a department manager at Walmart. Not exactly the sort of work I think he probably envisioned himself in. And this was a common thing. Rutland looked like it had been hit by a nuclear weapon after the recession hit. Thankfully, we have more or less recovered. There are still parts of the country recovering, but Trump has brought the recovery through his policies away from just where Obama cared, which was urban centers and this outlying suburban regions, especially along the coast. Those areas recovered years ago, for the most part. I realize there's still some blight there, but basically through the Rust Belt down into West Virginia, parts of Appalachia, and out into other parts of the country, and anywhere basically outside of the coasts or a few big urban centers in the core of the country that is not being affected positively by the energy boom didn't get an Obama recovery. They stayed blighted. The population began to dwindle. And you have basically things that were nice becoming a little edgy, things that were a little edgy becoming kind of seedy, areas that were seedy becoming like wastelands, like ghettoized completely. This is the result of the movement of trade in this country and manufacturing back to the coasts away from the Rust Belt. Remember, Detroit, one of its big problems is basically all the need for Detroit as a shipping spot basically dries up. There's no longer any compelling reason in the age of mass travel in the modern sense, as opposed to when Detroit was sort of first a boomtown. The idea that you wanted a location central within the United States to ship out to all other areas efficiently, it no longer made sense, especially when a lot of those areas began themselves no longer consuming as much, going into decline because of the movement of manufacturing. So it sort of spirals out of control. That, and at this point, there are other problems in Detroit as well. But having low unemployment is good. Having as few people unemployment at 0% would be wonderful, but it'll never be achieved. Here's the thing, though. We were all celebrating not that long ago, I think, early in the summer. It's like, oh, unemployment is below 4% for the first time in, 20 years or something. Something to celebrate. Now it's at a 50-year low. It's continuing to fall. There's no reason to believe that it won't fall at least a little bit further. At some point it stabilizes. But it's already at a massively low level compared to even a couple of years ago when we're talking about, 5%. A few years before that, we're talking, 9% unemployment, and so at some points, very, very disastrous for your economy. At the very least, things are moving in a positive direction. Then we're about, I can't remember exactly when it'll be released. We're going to get another, general growth report, I believe, before the midterms. It's probably going to approach 5%. It might be higher. The fact is that the economy is doing well now. It was funny because Trump earlier, a link in the description to his tweet, the top tweet, at least when I read it, and it might still be so when you read it, was, oh, thanks, Obama. It's funny how it was the Trump economy when the stock market briefly shuttered. It was the Trump economy when growth was, for the first, quarter there, a little bit lower than anticipated. It's been the Obama economy at every other time. So literally, we're now 10 years into the Obama economy. Well, technically only a few years. Remember, Obama kept blaming Bush for the first year or two. So that was the Bush economy, lapsing in him. At what point are people going to give up the shtick and admit to at least one thing? And I think the Wall Street Journal had an article, hey, at the very least on the economy, Trump is doing fine. We can't really criticize it because things are going in the same direction they were under Obama. We were applauding that. There it is. There was a different article that has nothing to do with the economy, but it's interesting to see. Scott Adams, by the way, predicted this, that the media eventually would come to Trump and sort of make peace with him. It is starting a little bit to begin. And that's how Trump wins 2020, by the way. I think he had a proper timeline in mind when he designed his long-term, first-term strategy. It was an article that was basically like, well, Trump may be a bully, but, you need a bully to stand up to the other bullies on the world stage. So at least insofar as that's the case, it's helping. Like, we're doing better against China. He's the only one with the balls to take them on. He did succeed largely in North Korea and still is. Russia's not, really doing much at the moment because they're, I think, slightly concerned by Trump too. So it's actually very funny. But as far as the economy goes, it's been nonstop winning for the entirety of Trump's presidency. There are some people, remember when, was it Warren or Pelosi? I think it was Pelosi when she came out with the last report, the growth report. It's like GDP growth was higher than expected, higher than it has been trending for years. It was good. It was a good report, all things considered. It was like, 4-point-something%. And Pelosi, I think it was, came out and said, well, that doesn't matter. That's all poo-poo. Basically, it doesn't matter. Wages are stagnant. But now we know that wages have begun to rise again. It was just a blip. For a single quarter, there were very little wage growths going on. Now it's begun to rise again. And that's also very good for the economy. You don't just want people employed. You want them to be able to make ends meet, hopefully. I would say. All things considered, the economy is, right now, you'd have to give the economy a B+. It's still got room for more growth, but it's doing very well. Like, the best Obama would have ever gotten was like a C- towards the end of his presidency, largely because of private sector movements within the energy sector, as opposed to anything having to do with his own policies. Trump, meanwhile, is like, we're going to drop taxes, restructure the tax code a bit. It's basically throwaway on the latter end. But at the same time, we're going to deregulate things massively. And then we're going to fuck around with the trade deals. That's giving these businesses confidence because what they see is exactly what Trump was planning on. Which is that what you do is you throw your weight around, you come off as though you're completely unhinged. And your allies, because they don't want you to fuck them over and, put them into a depression, will say, okay, we'll give you a little bit of what you're asking for. Basically, what you do, you go in asking for 100 things, and if you come away with 2 or 3, you've still come away with more than you had before. You have won. You've just caused them to believe that they've won by, chipping down the big ask. That's, again, art of the deal 101. It's basically what Trump does. Remember when they had that story there where it says, Trump talks about how great he is in negotiations, but he fundamentally lost with The Apprentice. He had asked for, $10 million an episode or something, some insane price, and then they laughed at him and they gave him a little more money. But the thing is, he managed to get more money per episode while getting free advertising through a program that he incurred no cost to create. He was being given free publicity for his brand that was already a well-known national brand. And in fact, internationally important and prestigious. He was given free publicity, got to rub elbows with celebs, and he got paid to do it, while somebody else bothered to produce the show. And then, of course, he leaves and it just totally fucking collapses. He got out while the getting was good, because the sort of era of that kind of programming was over anyway. As far as jobs and money goes, though, he's your guy. Trump is the biggest money president that we've had in a very long time. The confidence that inspires. The businesses are looking at the economy, they're looking at Trump and what he says, what he does. They're like, hey, we don't have to worry at least while he's the president. Trust me, there would be an economic downturn if the Democrats were actually to manage to impeach him. It would fuck the economy. That claim by the Republicans is not false because that consumer confidence, the business confidence would go away. That's fundamentally what's driving it. So I'm glad. And then Mar or more, one of these morons will come out and say, well, I'm hoping for an economic downturn. This is bad news because Trump's approval might rise. He's riding very close to 45 right now, with the Democrats imploding over Kavanaugh, another good jobs report, and upcoming another good GDP report. He's riding high, especially if tomorrow, President Moon were to come out with Kim Jong-un, buddy mode, and they're like, oh, we just had a drink, we signed a treaty to end the war. Trump's approval would go up a couple points that day too. He might get to 50%, in his first term. It's entirely possible that he manages to breach that supposed ceiling above which Trump can never go. I think that that's a total illusion driven by the basically media frenzy. That's about all. Peace out.